So my name is Elena Petrushina. I'm a freediving instructor and lead author and producer of the AIDA Youth Program, which is the world's first comprehensive program to teach freediving skills to children. I initiated it and produced it and authored most of the material, including children educational material and the whole course for instructors. I started to work in freediving from the beginning of 2012. I was certified at the very end of 2011 and started working actively in 2012. And for a while, I was seemingly the busiest instructor in Dahab, and then just an instructor in Dahab. From the very beginning, I worked sometimes with children. And I had questions about how to teach them, and perhaps some limitations, and many questions. Then I also, even earlier than, even before I started to work in freediving, I saw people introducing children to the water, and I saw very questionable methods of doing that, such as forced submersion, such as making children dive in enclosed environment for long distances, quite long distances in an enclosed environment, for example, and specifically a lot of forced submersion, abusive practices. For example, I saw a child being 5 years old. The father held him by his arms like this, with his feet on the father's thighs. So the child is like this. The father is standing in the water up to the waist, for example, and the father makes the child submerge forcibly, repeatedly, many times, and the child crying, please, crying in Russian, please, dad, stop, don't, please, and so on. People would not even pay attention to that. And then at some point, the child would stop crying and begging and only exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. And supposedly that's what they were after. I saw babies more than once, babies, months old, weeks old, and a year old, let's say, yeah. Infants being also forcibly submerged in the water until the same point, breathing out in. I saw a 7 and 8 years old child being led by a trainer and the mother, one hand in another, like this, bent, all crooked and shaking. And the trainer says, see, it wasn't that scary, was it? The child looking at mama, shaking, and mama goes, right? And the child goes, right. I saw children being a trainer. So a child is swimming along the reef, snorkeling. Trainer swims behind and presses, using their fins, presses the child, and the water submerges, let's say 1 meter, 1.5 meter, so that the child enjoys the view there at the reef. But I saw the eyes of the child in the mask, completely frightened, and so on. And I saw more than those situations. I didn't approach those trainers to argue with them, to tell them that those methods were questionable, because I realized that they firmly believed in their ways. And I was thinking how to affect that. And my decision was to find an organization that would introduce some regulations of youth freediving, and then there is something to appeal to, saying that that's wrong, or even the parents could compare the approaches and choose. I was an AIDA instructor, and I decided to approach my organization. I didn't feel ready to that, to be honest. So I ended up taking another course, like improving my education, and I was teaching children actively for 2 years. I had been offering virtually free courses for children in order to gain experience before I approached AIDA. By then, AIDA France had their own standards, their own AIDA France requirements to teaching children. And they tried to approach AIDA International with that without much luck. So I first contacted Jean-Paul Francois, was the educational officer at the time, and he readdressed me to AIDA France. I got in contact with them. They accepted some additions from me related to abuse prevention. And then in 2018, I think, Brian Crossland became educational officer, and then I approached AIDA again, the board and Brian Crossland, and then they thought of it, and in some months invited me to work on it. Actually, I first I saw an opening for a volunteering position of communication administrator of the educational committee, and then I put myself forward for that position. Already at the stage of interviewing, coming clean that I have that in mind, I wanted to propose myself to develop AIDA Youth program. They accepted me, and then some months later, I signed the contract and started to work with them. Before I signed that contract with them, I was told by the education officer, Brian, explicitly that they were not going to pay more than a certain amount for that work. So they were not. They discussed what amount, a modest amount, they were prepared to pay for that work, and I was instructed to create a plan that would not exceed those hours, and that covered about 10th part of my time, to be honest. And I was so naive and motivated that I agreed to that. That's how I end up having only a fraction of my time paid after all. And I was still happy to start that work. I wrote to all AIDA instructors, appealed to them, asking to share their developments if they had any in teaching children methodologies and modes, exercises, games. About 20 people responded, shared their developments all over the world. I started to work on the program and sending my developments to the education committee and the board without any reply ever. Nobody was interested. Then I realized that I needed I could not write. Just someone named Elena Petrushina all of a sudden teaches everyone to teach children how to freedive. That was not acceptable to me. Yeah, that was ridiculous. And because I realized that that had to be collective work, yeah, collective knowledge. So I found those instructors who shared their developments and sounded conservative, safety-wise. I invited them to form a so-called AIDA Youth Commission, and they agreed. So I had 5 people looking after me. I could run ideas past them. I could ask questions so that they contribute their opinions. And I was sending them every bit of my material to be checked by them, assessed. And one of them actually contributed so much. She became a co-author of my guidelines for children. And once this commission was created, then the work became proper, normal, let's say. Yeah, everything started to run more or less smoothly. And I managed to even, I had some sub deadlines, and I managed to send over my materials even slightly earlier, like several days earlier than those sub deadlines. And I remember Brian Crossland making that joke, saying, don't do that. In AIDA we don't do that. Now they're going to expect us all to be sending our stuff on time. It's not customary there. Largely during my work on the material, it was cool. It was kind of cool. I had to work with a lot of people worldwide, specialized in their own stuff, sharing their expertise. Working with the medical committee AIDA was also very interesting. Working with this youth commission was very interesting and challenging, and I could see that we are doing good stuff. And I was getting some good feedback, some just indifferent. I was ahead of my sub deadlines until I had to rely on the people working with AIDA, within AIDA Education Committee or IT tech department. When you need to do layout designs, the tech work on the platform that hosts, that manages our certifications and everything, then we started to get delays, months and months delays. Sometimes a person would not even respond for 3 months. Then I had to do much more work than even was expected. I will remind that I only charged for a fraction of my time. And then more work started to come unexpected. I was doing it. Then I started to complain. And I approached Brian. I asked him to compensate at least part of those new projects within AIDA Youth, and he was kind enough to agree to some of those. We're talking about $100 or €2 on top of my previous contract, and if it's interesting, the first contract, initial contract, I think was €3,000 or €2,000, and I worked for over 2 years, not full time, but a lot, close to full time at times. So the delays started to pile up, and the stress started to increase immensely. By the end of 2019, everything was ready to launch. Written, designed, photo, video shot, laid out. The platform, the AIDA website, was ready to host. The platform, the another platform, Thinkific, for the online course for instructors, also I managed everything there. What was needed to be done was write emails to the instructors, write press releases, send out press releases to the media, start educating instructors, manage their learning and support their learning in the initial stage. By then, I had done so much work on top of whatever was paid. It was crazy. I was already running out of everything, even just physical energy. All of a sudden, in the very beginning of 2020, Brian texts us, education committee, members, instructing us to stop working, because what was already done by us in January 2020 was not going to be paid. We didn't really understand much, but then it became clearer. So at the very end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020, Carla Hansen passed. She was the president, AIDA president by then. The vice president who was working with her, Alexandru Russu, took her position. Interestingly, then he was actually elected by the assembly later as president, while no one knew that they could put forward their candidacy for that position. They quietly elected him. There was no one competing with him because nobody knew. I was communication admin in the educational committee. I didn't know anyone could apply to be AIDA president. Quietly elected Alexandru Russu as president. Even before being officially elected, he started changes. Secretary at the time was Philippe Péan. He and Alexandru, firstly, they started to stonewall our invoices. And so Brian was right that they were not going to pay for our work. And they started to interrogate us as if we were embezzling or something, treating us as criminals. Because I was the communication admin, I felt I had to reply and communicate a lot on behalf of the community. That's how they dragged a lot of my time without compensation. I had to answer for myself, for the community members, explaining what work was done, what was paid, and how much more was done. The communication with them seemed threatening. They created Microsoft Teams profile for us, for AIDA, so that all communication was done in there. I was the only person out of the educational committee to join that Microsoft Teams, and they started to drag that time and effort out of me, asking everything again, so interrogating me again in those teams, and stonewalling and avoiding anything that I needed decisions from them. For example, basically I needed them to sign a new contract with me that would cover my last couple of months of work on launching the youth program and managing the first instructors taking the online course, supporting them, helping, answering questions, so on. They refused to do that, constantly repeating volunteering. By the way, I know that the same people, some of the same people who were asking me and telling me about volunteering were paid for their work, at least some of their work. I saw those correspondences even that proved that they were paid. And the same people dared telling me that I had to volunteer some more and more of my work after I had volunteered a lot in the past 2 years. They turned it into me demanding more money for the work that was supposed to be done, which was the opposite of truth. And I was providing evidence because I made everything super transparent and clear because I was afraid of abuse from the beginning. I had everything on Dropbox, everything in email group correspondence or Facebook chat group correspondence. Everything was transparent. And they still treated me as I was demanding more money for the work that was supposed to be done. So and I realized that they were not just abusing me, they were trying to mix it up, trying to confuse me a lot in that communication in Teams. And I asked them to go back to email because there were no witnesses to that, to them abusing me. I took the correspondence with them. The board, basically Russu and Péan, president and secretary at the time back to the group emails where I had Youth Commission and AIDA France representatives, and some of the education committee members were in those group emails, and then I was able to persuade them to take the decisions that were supposed to be taken by the board. What kind of decisions? How we manage the program. For example, we decided to forego instructor trainer system and instead make a group within AIDA Education Committee that is responsible for AIDA Youth, because it has to be a collective. And if there is no one in the world to teach youth freediving, how do you find instructor trainers? Yeah, you just appoint them or what? That's unfair. That's why I proposed, and the Youth Commission agreed, and some members agreed to that solution, so that we have a group that manages the youth program from within Education Committee. One of the decisions that was supposed to be done by them was to sign that contract with me to pay the last couple of months of work. They were reluctant. They like they were writing insults to me. They were stonewalling whatever proposals I will send. They were also stonewalling the other projects I had started at AIDA at the time. For example, relaxation material. It's still not there. AIDA doesn't have it. It was proposed by me in 2019, and I started working on it. Also, this education committee and communication administration, I also asked them to cover at least, to compensate at least some of that work. They wouldn't sign anything. They wouldn't extend any contracts with me, stonewalling it. I insisted that I would no longer be exploited that way, and they went after me. They, at some point, they invited me to what they called special board meeting under this guise of discussing AIDA youth issues. They dragged me there to abuse, to tell me off, to accuse me of things. And most of other board members and assembly members were supporting them, and only Sasha Jeremik, she's currently president, she was treasurer at the time, and Brian Crossland, education officer at the time, only these two said at least something, that she doesn't seem to be malicious. She seems to be genuinely responsible and interested. And I guess because of their words, they still decided to sign the contract after all. But after accusing me of things and reproaching and abusing me at that meeting, I left. They asked me to leave, to discuss that behind my back, continue discussing that behind my back. But I was still in the group chat and Skype, where they then sent the recording to everyone. It was all on record. Then they sent the recording in the group chat, and I listened. That after I left, Alexandru Russu, president at the time, openly suggested to the board members to discriminate me because she spoke out about it. Let us not let her finish the program and let us refuse signing contract with them. That is on record, and that record is, I made it public. No one paid attention. No one. So, President of AIDA, openly, on record, offered to discriminate me, and nobody cared. Why I said that? Because I spoke out. Because delays were piling up. It was months since it was ready to be just released, sent over, yeah? And the instructors in the Facebook instructor group started to ask me, what the hell? Where is the program? We've been waiting. You promised. How many months already? It's been delayed. And at some point, I just said, please ask the board. Someone mentioned Russu and said, what up? They got so offended by that was, I realized that after listening to that meeting recording, I realized that was one of the main reasons why they went after me, because I just said, just ask the board why there are delays. And basically because I refuse to be exploited any further. They are used to exploit. I wanted to actually mention that in the very beginning, exploitation in freediving. Now, looking back at this situation, I realized that the heart of this situation is this passion to exploit in the freediving industry. I saw it in the clubs, schools, freediving schools, how most of schools exploit their instructors, their bodies. You will go in the sea when we tell you. You will go in the sea with bad ears. You will go in the sea many days in a row. You will go in the sea slightly ill. You will go in the sea having your period. You will just go in the sea when they told you. Not only will you go in the sea, you will go out to dinners with them daily. And if you're not, they reproach you. It seemed to me in my first years of working in freediving that I was like nicely avoiding that, because I was more or less independent and I could plan my own work, my own trainings. I mean, trainings of teaching people. I was not a staff member of any school. I was working with some schools, but I was naive. And eventually I got more exploitation for the intellectual work of mine. I was also working with one club in Russia, writing for them and promoting their site, their personalities as well, public relations. And then I started to work with AIDA also that way. I used to call it dry work. Doing dry work for AIDA, also being exploited. They think that they have this entitlement to exploit you because you work in your dream, because it's such a cool job being a freediving instructor in the blue among the fish and all the monofin. They feel that we will sell our souls short, and we do, just for that, yeah, for allowing us to work our dream. And it is so common in freediving, exploitation. And people are so used to it and they feel so entitled to it. They will abuse if you refuse to be exploited. So the special board meeting and the president offering openly to discriminate me because I said things out loud. There was also another instance, interesting instance. As this communication administrator of Education Committee, I was responsible for email blasts. And one of the email blasts during those first months of 2020 was, the information was provided by the education officer, and the email was approved by the education officer. One of the points of the email included the financial report to instructors on the education committee. By the way, that's when I realized that a lot of huge part of the budget was returned back to AIDA International from the education because it wasn't spent. But I wasn't given that money. I was only told that we're prepared to give you those couple of thousand in 2 years. So they don't know even how to spend the money, but they won't pay us properly. I sent that email because the education officer instructed me to, but the blame was put on me. So one of the accusation within that board meeting was for that email that was unforgivable and blah, blah, blah. Why? Instructors are entitled to know where their money goes, their certification fee goes. And for some, and I kept telling that wasn't my authorhood. That was the instruction given to me by the educational officer, who is entitled to take such decisions. It wasn't decided by me. They still went after me. Well, sorry to say, but I'm a woman and a woman with no name. I guess that was the reason as well. And interestingly, that email, I received it myself as well, because I was an instructor in the database. I opened it and read it. Then sometime later, after that meeting, I think, I found that I cannot find that in my mail. I found 2 other people, one in Russia, one in Italy, who confirmed at the time, yes, I had opened that email, I had read it, I cannot find it anymore. I remember the data in it. Then I checked online whether it was possible to hack people's mail and remove an open, read, received letter. And apparently it became possible just months before that. And I do not know who did that, but that is a crime. That's when I became very frightened. What else will they do? They abused me, threatened me, hacked my email, not only mine, also tampered with my contract. So eventually at the end of that meeting, they decided to still sign that contract with me, because I was the only person in the world to know that program, because nobody cared. At some point, after that meeting, I sent a letter to them saying that I wouldn't, because my health condition deteriorated so badly, I could hardly take care of myself. And they started to put pressure on me now. Sasha Yeremy called, another person called, another person called. Oh, Elena, no one knows. No one can do it better than you. No one can do it at all. No one could do it at all. They didn't know. And they convinced me again. Yeah, I was a super responsible, naive person. And I agreed to work, and Philippe Péan sent me a draft for the new contract, and as customary, those bits that are to be changed were marked red, in red ink. And I did put some changes, including I wrote down the amount of compensation, and as instructed by the treasurer, Sasha Yeremik, I was supposed to be paid this amount, and the tax that I was going to pay in my country as self-employed was also the burden of AIDA. I think it was only 9% tax to be paid. But Philippe Péan changed that so that I had to pay that tax. It was my burden. And he hid those same changes in black ink. So it was red after me, but then changed and hidden after him. That's when I said that, no, I'm not working with you. I have lost everything now, or any patience, not just patience, but physical energy. One of the reasons why I agreed, I also, so 2 years of work, and I couldn't even show it in my CV. And I thought, okay, then responsibility, I'm the only person. And the children, that was I guess it's the opposite. Number 1, the children. Number 2, responsibility. Number 3, to have it at least in my CV. Spoiler, wasn't useful. And that is how I proceeded working. So by then I had, apparently, I learned it only in 2023 that I had a chronic condition that was very serious, a lot more serious than I thought. It results in extreme weakness and pain and anxiety, let's call it, yeah, huge stress, fear. And it affects also peripheral nerves, including autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. I would drop things, and by the way, I juggle. Yeah, I'm not used to dropping things. and suicidal impulses. I will wake up. I wouldn't be able to stroke the cat. The cat will jump to me, and I couldn't lift my hand to stroke the cat. The first tens of minutes upon waking up, wouldn't be able to lift my head off the pillow. So frightening, so scary. I would do some massages, the little spiky mats, whatever I would do, tongue massage that I picked up from yogis, and that would help me roll out and crawl to brush my teeth, and then crawl to the yoga mat and start exercising, self-massaging, roll-ups, or all those bits and balls, and slowly yoga. By the end of another hour, I would be able to use my hands, arms to make myself some food, coffee, tea, and I will sit down and work. And from the very beginning, from the very first moment until going to bed, I had to fight suicidal impulses. Autoimmunity also gives you that during flare-ups. And that condition is stress-related. I acquired it because of trauma back in 2013. And every stress, especially prolonged stress, would result in huge flare-ups. And that was the worst stress I had since the beginning of my disease. And for over half a year, I was exposed to that. With AIDA, I mean, and crawling, literally crawling to sit down and work on something that was supposed to be joy. That was it was my life work, kind of, at the time, and I guess still I haven't done anything bigger than that. And there was no joy in my life at all. I was able to swim by the end of the day. There was some joy. Also, my colleagues and friends turned away from me. There was one Russian person to support me, one Italian, one Austrian. To support, I mean to write a comment or a post. No more. Others were joining the abuse. That's how I qualified. So in 2020, during the bullying by AIDA Administration, I lost my health so much. I lost endurance. Climbing stairs, for example, requires me to use other limbs other than legs. No running. Swim, I can still swim. Not in the sun though. I'm very sensitive to sun now too. And holding, so the arms are affected, the neck, holding your head, and the breathing musculature. By then, by 2020, apparently I had that condition for 7 years, and I managed to teach freediving with that actively. That's how I was fit initially, and maintaining my fitness, daily routines, exercise. And starting then, after that abuse, I am no longer physically capable of teaching freediving. I'm no longer capable of running, running away. And I do more breathing exercises than any freediving athlete I know of. Even not just I know. I bet I do more Udianas, Naulis, whatever Kapalabhati exercise for breathing musculature more than any freediving champion in the world. I do not freedive. I do that daily to be able to breathe. I am able to skip for only 2 days during my period, where women are instructed to skip for the whole time and a few days before and after. I only can do the first days. Otherwise, it's so scary. It's very, very frightening when your diaphragm stops and unable to work. So, and it's also very painful. So I have like 40 minutes of only breathing exercises a day. So that's how I had to finish that work. I worked another 2 months launching it. Oh, we got the youth program. Speaking with the media, for example. And then I was supposed to be replaced. And I was, guys, you need someone to replace me. Because someone needs to know things. They proposed one person. I will not name their name. His name. He was a Buddhist monk. Kind of genuine, as they said. European, ethnic European. But Buddhist monk, freediving instructor, a father, parent. That's why, because he was a parent, they proposed him. He rang me saying that I have no qualification. I don't know why they're pushing me. So I spent hours talking to him, corresponding to him, trying to pass to him my work. And discussing even the organizational parts. For example, they kept insisting that instructor-trainer system must be introduced. And I was not arguing, just giving back my critical feedback, saying that the reasons for that, those we were discussing it already. Ask those their opinion. No, they were insisting and still being like bullying. So eventually, they dragged that Buddhist monk into bullying me online. Writing abusive posts and accusing me and things like that. That was fun. Spoiler, they eventually did introduce the instructor-trainer system, suggesting that along with the disciplinary committee, this system would keep children safe. I will tell more about that. First, I will tell about my losses. I completely lost every income then. Nil. I lost the ability to work in the sea. Definitely. I lost most of it. Like, my ability to be seated and typing is now limited to a few hours a day with breaks to exercise and lie down. And practicing, like, constantly I practice breathing, relaxation methods, and also so-called transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation. Recently I discovered a few years ago, that times a day, 2 to 4 times a day, I have to practice those to maintain the ability to be seated and go cook for myself. And I can only work very few hours a day. I'm still not back on my feet. I'm dependent on my family. I have some little income, but not even close to covering my expenses since, it's been 5+ years now. So I have not recovered financially. I will never recover physically. My endurance is nearly non-existent. Now I get tired. I'm gonna have a good big rest after this hour of speaking. and I need to exercise twice, 2 trainings a day plus a walk, out of which about 40 minutes dedicated to only breathing muscles. And I'm having to establish a new career in my 40s in this condition now. And now I'm having to work a lot without compensation, just because I need to present myself. I'm doing, if interesting, by the way, preparing myself to proposing my person as an author of this program. I took a requalification, so-called requalification course on educational psychology. I was a physics teacher by education already, and took a year course, less than a year course on educational psychology, and now I teach emotional intelligence to children and self-regulation methods to adults. And by the way, I teach transcutaneous electrical vagus nerve stimulation in freediving, is one of my my group training. So if anyone is interested, I am in search of partnership with any organization. I can teach that online as well as offline, where people can try the device. And breathing techniques, relaxation techniques, I'm trying to, I started to develop online courses and give consultations and group trainings on that. It still hasn't picked up that much. I still have to contribute a lot of time in putting myself out there, which is so scary. One of the worst consequences of that bullying was the anxiety of public speaking. So my background, I used to perform on stage as acting, directing, and singing. I used to write songs and guitar, reading poems so people cry in the audience. That's how I was used to public speaking. I was teaching anything from 2 people to 20 plus people classes, group classes on anything. And starting 2020, I was frightened to take a job interview like this online. I would prepare myself for days, yoga, exercise, rules, all the breathing, and then even more days recovering from any phone call. And I had to put myself out there. By now, I'm so much better. And it's been since 2020. I got better maybe at the end of last year. So it took me about 5 years to more or less recover from this public speaking anxiety, which is much in the way of my putting myself out there for the new career. I did not at the time know that I would never be able, well, never, I won't say, I will no longer be able to teach freediving. I thought that I might recover and teach again, but I quit because I realized it very clearly with each bit of my mind and my body that it is irresponsible and dangerous to work in an extreme sports with such people. Irresponsible and not being for one another. Because the people in the club that I worked with for about 9 years by then in Russia, they betrayed me. One of them was in the medical committee. When I shared with her what they were doing to me, her suggestion was, why don't you steal their database for our club? I said, that would be a crime, I think. She said, oh, all right. Otherwise, the other person in that Moscow club took their side, basically. Hinted that I wasn't in my right mind, kind of. And this being not in my right mind followed me it's one of the also big bad consequences. People don't take me seriously. They think I'm mad. And no, I'm not. I did go to a psychiatrist and psychotherapist and spend a lot of money, by the way, on that. No, I wasn't diagnosed with any mental disorder. I was eventually diagnosed with this autoimmune, very serious condition. Rare and serious. The betrayal by nearly everyone, and those that actually wanted to do something, they have to give up. Well, they gave up because there was no support from others. They were also being labeled as with that nuts Petrushina. And I realized that no one should work with these people in extreme sports. When I was separating with that Russian club, one of the issues was I noticed that they weren't following safety procedures in the pool, in the training. No one was looking after each person. I was even told by the students, like, what? No one does that here. And when we had the club group call, I put it on the table, and I even had to threaten leaving. They didn't. They avoided, put it up, and no one does it. And anyway, it's not that difficult to come. It's very interesting even to come up with a system of how to make nice safety in a pool. No, they were reluctant. They felt, I don't know what they felt. They felt attacked or what. Guys, we need to. No, how can you? And that was one of the bits. Yeah, so I see that people don't care about safety during trainings. People don't care about each other, about their own. People don't care about just a fellow freediver. And people abuse. They go after you. And when you're like begging, I was telling them, please stop, it causes me illness. No. So these people are dangerous. They are negligent and abusive, and they're not to be worked with in extreme sports, and they should not be trusted your children. Yeah? Do not trust your children to AIDA. They will neglect, they will cover up should anything happen. Freediving did not become more regulated. It was my initial goal. It did not become more regulated. It became less regulated because it became so much more popular because of my work, but not regulated. Now they have hundreds, if not thousands, only youth instructors. And I asked artificial intelligence to give me an overview of percentage of the population inclined to abuse. 10 to 15% of both genders are inclined to abuse children of any type of abuse in the United States. Only, yeah. 1 to 5% worldwide, mostly male population, are inclined to sexual abuse of children. Do the maths. There will be times when there will be abuse, including horrible abuse. People will not investigate your cases. They will cover up and they will continue abusing you and your kids if it comes to it. That's my speculation, yeah? Based on my first-hand experience with these people. And no one, they are not answerable to anyone. In 2023, I tried to appeal to several media, including the Deeper Blue. I was asking to investigate this, to write about this, and about exploitation and abuse in freediving in general. It is a big issue and must be publicly discussed. No, they're avoiding it because they're involved with AIDA. Other media also either ignored or refused, saying it is an employment issue. For example, I had an answer. I wrote to several organizations. AIDA is registered in Switzerland, so I wrote to some Swiss organizations, including those that are looking after sports or other NGOs. And I wrote to the world organizations. I rarely got answers. And if I did, it was mostly just refusing. And one of the people, I think it was a Swiss sports organization, she rang all of a sudden, a lady from there, and she admitted, said that I do understand. And you have to realize that until there is a victim, nothing will be done. So, if anyone has experiences, adverse experiences with AIDA, especially with involving children, find at least my article that is hosted on, what's the name? It used to be Freediving Thrive, and was different. Tony Mack's web page, Freedive Cafe's owner's web page. There is an article on the internet published that is called "Systemic Abuse and Negligence at AIDA." I wrote it, and there is my contact. There is evidence of negligence and abuse in AIDA. If there is a victim, use my evidence to strengthen your case against AIDA, and I will testify. If I am invited ever, I will testify. So the system that they propose to replace my system of having a group within AIDA Youth Commission, let's say, that will look after the following AIDA youth standards, for example, and responsible for updates, because in this case, every year information needs to be updated. Yeah? There is nothing like this. There is no person responsible in AIDA for the youth program. But they introduced the instructor-trainers system, and they suggest that together with the disciplinary committee it would work. I know it wouldn't. In parallel, along with this bullying, I took one of the first courses that are called Freediving Emergency Medical Responder course, I think. Authored by Catherine Crossland, the wife of Brian Crossland, who was education committee officer at the time. They also involved as a co-author Chantel Newman. She's not AIDA instructor or AIDA representative. To be honest, I was helping them as an AIDA communication admin of educational committee. I was helping them genuinely, spreading the word and like praising this course. And then I took, was it the second or one of the first courses they were giving in Dahab. It was happening in Dahab. There were several attendees. It cost 800 euros per few days, like 4 or 5 days, something like this. I saw that the material was, let's call it raw. So the trainers were Catherine Crossland, Brian Crossland, and Chantel Newman. Chantel Newman is not AIDA instructor trainer. She did not have the right to teach them, apparently. Especially Catherine was so unsure of what she was teaching. I was anxious. Some other student was actually also anxious. And we both noticed maltreatment, weaponizing our anxiety. Because I had some questions naively again, yeah, some questions about the material. It seemed that Catherine took it badly, my questions and remarks. Although I tried to be nice, because I was anxious, she tried to kick me out of the course and didn't certify me. Other candidates saw me and they were saying, why did she not certify you? You did well. You actually did. I did complete the scenarios that were exams. They were surprised. And so I ended up being bullied by her. In person, in writing, I have emails from her. Me, I wasn't normal. My behavior wasn't normal. Things like this, even. Refusing to certify, insulting. Eventually, I wrote to the disciplinary committee explaining the situation. The disciplinary committee, instead of investigating, they texted to both Catherine and Chantal Newman and took their word and replied back to me with their official letter PDF, something with their names under it. So they signed an official document that threatened me, saying that my complaint didn't have merit, and if I complained again, they would think of, I guess, withdrawing my instructor status, or any applying any other disciplinary measures to me. I later was contacted by the new vice president at the time. She's no longer Yulia Marievich, asking me more about this course later, months later. And I was hoping that there would be investigation, there would be something to protect me. But no, as I realized later, she seemed to be digging information against Brian. And they didn't help me at all. Nothing changed. But because of her contacting me on our correspondence and calls, I realized that they all knew that that course wasn't all right, and the situation wasn't all right. The material, the course itself wasn't all right. And the way it was even created, that course, and led, was against the AIDA standards and values. I will tell you that Catherine Crostland is still a female instructor trainer listed on their website. Nothing changed. The names of people in the disciplinary committee at the time who threatened me, and I have evidence of them threatening me, are Grant Grave, Claude Chapuis, Juan Valdivia, Roberta Senedez, and Kim Bong-jae. These were the members of the disciplinary committee who neglected their responsibilities and abused their positions to threaten me and silence me and abuse me further. Juan Valdivia followed me on Instagram recently. I don't think he remembers. That Buddhist monk who liked me on Tinder, he doesn't remember who he bullied. To disability, to diaphragm dysfunction. There is no responsibility in this world. Freediving organizations and people in the positions in those organizations do not answer to anyone. If you're lucky in your local jurisdiction, you can go after just an instructor if they abuse you or something, or neglect the responsibilities that would cause harm to you, if you're lucky. And this is a big problem. And that's why there will be exploitation. There will be exploitation because it's beautiful, because it's your dream. They will exploit it. They will feel entitled to it. And there will be abuse because they acted with such impunity, openly threatening me, openly suggesting discrimination, writing "you're not normal," writing things to me. Yeah, that's evidence. Hacking my email, crime, tampering with my contract. Yeah, they are not afraid. And that is why I think these issues need public attention, media attention. And that's why I am calling for the media to pay attention, to invite me to be interviewed, and get more information out of me, probably, than I can give just like this, going on my own. And I'm no longer inclined to deceive myself and with baseless hopes that freediving or diving world would pay attention to it. To be honest, I'm more hopeful that media related to abuse or cults might be interested, because what helped me understand what it was information about cults. That was cult dynamic, and about narcissistic abuse, to be honest. That helped me understand what happened to me, and that information helped me become a little more cynical, reasonable on that. I no longer expect any good